introduce the person who volunteered to come and speak to you. I had the pleasure of listening to him speak to the opening day to all our teachers in the Sweetwater Union High School District. And then I had the next pleasure to listen to him at Southwestern College to speak to our faculty. And I'm very impressed because I've read a couple of his books, but I won't mention that. But I really enjoy and respect his dedication to equity and to social justice, and to really understanding what we need as a society to make sure that we give our students all the education they need to navigate in our society. So I really admire him and appreciate him, and with no further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Pedro Noguera.
Good morning.
Yeah. Be careful.
And buenos dias. It is a real pleasure to be here. And I want to thank the district, Sweetwater, for inviting me. And just say how inspired I am by seeing all of you here today. And aside from all the things that have gone into this, in some ways what impressed me the most was the books on the table. And seeing people getting those books. Because it shows an investment in the parents in a way that really can make a big difference. So I just want to applaud the district for what it's doing today. I want to say this, that when I came to Sweetwater almost 2 years ago to speak to the staff, I talked about the 5 essential ingredients for schools to improve. And I talked about the importance of making sure there's a coherent curriculum, making sure we're clear about what kids are learning, that there's a commitment to supporting the teachers, to make sure that the teachers have the skills needed to meet the needs of the students. I talked about the importance of building a school culture that affirms learning and supports the development of our children and the support of our staff so they feel good and supported in their work. And I talked about leadership and the need for leadership. And this district has good leadership because, as many of you know, there's been financial challenges, but this district has stood together and not allowed those challenges to enable them to turn on each other. But the 5th principle I spoke about was parents, and the importance of getting parents involved and having your parents as your partners. And what this today represents to me is a genuine commitment to that partnership. So I want to really applaud the district for the work you're doing to strengthen that partnership and ensure that that is a critical part of the work here. Because all of the research shows that when parents are involved at home with their children, children will do better in school. All the research shows that. And all you have to do is look at the highest achieving students. And today we saw Brenna up here, and I want to give Brenna a shout out because of the role she's taken on to lead this district in Sacramento. You can't do that without parent support. And I was talking to, I was watching this parent over here. He's there by himself. I want to shout out to the dads in the audience. How many dads are here today? No dads? Well, there's a dad over there. And I'm not sure if his name is Kingston or if the child's name is, you're Kingston. Okay. But his wife was just deployed, and he's there with 3 kids, and one of whom is not even 2, and he's managing. He says, we take turns. He was deployed, and now it's her turn, and he's managing. And more fathers are realizing they have to step up. They can't just turn to their spouses, their partners, their wives to do the work, because it takes a village to raise a child. And I know that my father used to always say to me, he'd see me changing diapers, he'd see me cooking and doing things. He said, I never did all that. What are you doing? What's wrong with you? I said, well, it's a new day. He says, well, I'm glad I wasn't around in those days, right? But I learned a lot from my parents, and I want to start there because neither of my parents graduated from high school. They were working too hard, both immigrants. They were people who sacrificed for their children. There were 6 of us. But they found a way to make sure all 6 of us went to college, all 6 of us. Harvard, Brown, Cornell, Berkeley, all 6 of us. And my parents were often asked, well, how did you manage to send all 6 of your kids to college? And my father would honestly say, I have no idea, because I was working the whole time, because he always worked 2 jobs. He said, it must be their mother. And it was right, because my mother, although she had only an 8th grade education, believed not only in education, but believed in excellence, and insisted on that for us. On Saturdays, after we did our chores, that was, I want you to know, after the chores, they would make us go to the library. My father used to teach us, you get a free education with a library card. And he practiced it, because he was very well read. We'd go to the library as if it was some kind of daycare center. But fortunately for us, there was this Panamanian librarian, Mrs. McDonald, who took time with each one of us to find out what we were interested in, and then introduce a book. Said, try this book. When I was 8 years old, she introduced me to a book called A Wrinkle in Time. I would have never read that book. I didn't like the cover, and I judged a book by its cover. I didn't like that it was science fiction. I wasn't interested in science fiction. I didn't like the fact that the lead character was a girl. I wanted a boy book. But I liked Miss McDonald. And so I read the book, and a week later, I was back for more. You know what happened to our children right now if we got them reading and put these smartphones away and get them off the video games? Their achievement would go up so high, and they would never be bored. Never. Because as long as you have a book, you'll never bored. And so I want to encourage the parents here to invest in reading with your children. And even a small child like this one over here who was playing with the book this morning, he can barely talk, but he's holding a book because he knows the book is important already. So I want to remind us today why parents matter. I texted my mother this morning and told her I was going to speak to parents, and I told her I was going to mention you, and she said, oh, thank you. and the reason why parents are important is manifold. First, they're the first teacher. They're the first teacher, and a lot of times we ignore all of the valuable lessons that first teacher, the parent, is providing. Typically, you learn your colors from your parents. You learn how to tie your shoes. You learn how to play with others. You're socialized on how to be a person by your parents. And you can always tell a child who's gotten a lot of care and love from their parents because when they get to school, they shine. They're ready to learn because they've been learning already at home. And too often we don't acknowledge how important that is. But the parents are the ones who are doing the work, even when you have a good preschool, and preschool is important, but can never make up for a parent. Because it is the parent who has to provide the love, the nurturing, the guidance. And as we all know, that guidance doesn't stop when you turn 5. It has to go on throughout the life. So that's the second reason why parents are important. Parents are important because all the research shows that when parents are involved with their children do better. Now, we always hear about parent involvement, but I think sometimes we get confused about what that means. Supporting the school by getting involved, selling cookies, raising funds, being in the PTA, all important. I'm glad we have parents that do that. But the most important form of parental involvement is what you do at home, not what you do at the school. I often have to remind educators, even if you never see the parents, and there are a lot of parents you're not going to see because they're too busy working. They have too much on their plate already. Even if you never see them, if they're involved with their children at home, then you have a partner. You have a partner because it's that parent who's going to reinforce the learning at home. And all parents, regardless of how much education they've had, can support their children. And are more likely to support their children if we ask them to, if we encourage them to. if we give them good guidance on how to support their children. Make sure they get to bed on time. Limit the TV, limit the video games. I can't say enough about this. We are seeing an addiction across the country to this. And it's not good for our kids. It's not good for adults either, let's be clear. Right? But we all have them, don't we? But I was lucky when I was growing up because we didn't have these. You know what we did instead? We played. We played outside. We played outside when it was cold. I remember coming inside with my hands numb, crying. But I still wanted to be outside. My parents didn't have money to buy us toys. You know what we did? We made toys. We took sticks and things like we found in the woods. We built forts. We did things like this. We did dangerous things that my parents never knew about. And that's how we learn. We learn how to deal with risk. We learn how to help each other. We learned how to choose teams and to be fair when we did. We learned how to resolve conflict. A lot of that we did on our own. This generation of children is not learning that way. A lot of our kids don't play outside. Parents are afraid that the outside is dangerous, so keep them inside. And now we wonder why we have so many children with health issues. Obesity, because they're not active physically. We're now discovering, wow, there's so much children can learn through play alone. And they're trying to bring play back into schools. Wow. And we realize, wow, music is such an important foundation for our children that we can't take away the music just because the budget gets tight. And today I saw the young ladies ready for the folklorico, and we saw the band this morning, a reminder of how important music is. So I want to say to the parents, continue to reinforce the education. Even if it's simply asking them, how was your day? What have you learned today? Checking in. Because by you checking in with them, they will know this is important. Share your stories with your children. A lot of our children don't know about their parents. They have no idea what you went through, about the decisions you made, about the sacrifices you made. And those lessons are important too, because they need to understand that nothing comes easy. I think too often our parents, in the desire to give their kids a good life, give them too much of what they don't need. Give them cell phones, give them the video games. I had a parent was literally, I saw them on their way to UCLA with a new video game, new Xbox. I said, you're bringing that to UCLA? She said, he wants it. I said, are you going to give him some drugs too? What else are you going to give him? Because this is not what he needs. And he's looking at me like, who is this guy? Why are you inviting me? But I think too often our parents indulge and overindulge in our children, and we don't give them what they need the most. What they need the most is our time. What they need the most is our love. What they need the most is our guidance. And I think too often our parents lose sight of that. And they think that the material things are going to make up for it, but they never do. And so you have to ask, what kind of children do we want to raise? Here's what things I know, because I have 5 children of my own. And they go from the age of 36 to 7. That's quite a span, huh? So I'm in this business for a long time. And I would say the hardest thing I do, of all the things I do work as a researcher, as a teacher, as a policymaker. The hardest thing I do is being a parent. Because even though they are older and some of them are younger, they all still need me and want me. And I'm only one parent dealing with all these children. But this is what I've learned. If you are serious about what kind of adults they will be, then you have to give them time. You have to give them attention. And I struggle with that because my first wife died 13 years ago. And when she died, I had to raise 4 kids on my own. And that was a huge challenge for me. And I had no roadmap on how to do this, how to address, especially my girls, who needed a mother in their life. And I went to see an acupuncturist once for one of my children. He said, you know what happened? You know, your children need their mother. I said, I know, their mother died. He said, that's why you have to be their mother now. I said, I have to be the mother. He said, you have to be the mother and the father. I said, I have no idea how to do this. He says, be like your mother. And so I realized that I had to come out with a nurturing a side of me that I wasn't even in touch with, but that my children needed. And so I want to encourage you as parents to spend the time. You know, there are a lot of parents who think that a conversation with their child has to be like an interrogation. You know, interrogation, you know, where were you? Who were you with? What did you do? And then they're shocked that the child is not sending a whole lot of things. And especially boys, they won't tell you anything, will they? Say, fine. No, I'm okay. Leave me alone. It depends on the boy. Not all boys, but I have two. And they're not, it takes time to communicate. My oldest son recently told me, he said, you're emotionally unavailable. I said, what does that mean? I have no clue of what it means to be emotionally available. Here I am. But even at 36, he wants my time, my support, my involvement. And so I want to encourage you to find a way to make the time for your child and to allow the relationship to evolve as they get older. A child needs different things when they're 2 or 3 than when they're 7 and 8. And when they're teenagers and things start to really change, they still need you, even if they're pushing you away. And even into their 20s and 30s, they're going to still need you in a different way. And the question is, can you let that relationship evolve as they evolve? Can you become a friend? Can you become someone who can listen to what's happening in their lives? Because so often we meet parents who have children who are in trouble, and they say, I had no idea. I had no idea my child was going through that. I had no idea that my child was involved with those things. And that's because the relationship became too distant. And so you have a chance to not allow that distance to grow. And so I encourage you to keep building the relationship. And the relationship doesn't have to happen always through a formal conversation. It can happen while we're cooking dinner and spending time together. It can happen while we're doing chores or going to the store to shop. It can happen simply by being together. And that time is critical. And so I want to encourage you to do that. I also want to encourage you to understand who their teachers are and what's happening in school. A lot of times, especially as they get older, they don't necessarily want you to be involved, do they? They're not inviting you in, right? And so I would encourage you to make sure that you know who the teachers are, know what the schedule is, know what choices they're making, because a lot of times children are being expected to make decisions that they're not really prepared for. Do you know what courses they need to be on track for college, for example? You should. Because it's very easy to be off track and to find suddenly you're in 11th or 12th grade and you haven't taken critical courses that you're going to need to be prepared. If neither of you went to college, your children might need help in figuring out how to manage the whole application process. I've done it now for 4 of my kids, and I'm a college professor. And each time we cried, we were stressed out. It was painful because the essays, the applications, it's a lot on your plate, but there are resources at your schools. There are counselors at your schools. Get to know them. Make sure that you tap into those resources because they will help you in helping your child. Model for them the importance of education, even if that's not been part of your experience. So when they read, you read. Share it. Maybe even read the same book. There are several copies of some books. Read together. Talk about what you're learning. Talk about what's going on in that book, because that demonstrates a lot to your child about the importance of education, about the need for commitment to ongoing learning. And that is critical. As I said before, my father and mother never got to go to college, so they couldn't help me. And as soon as I hit 8th grade and the work started getting more complicated, I couldn't turn to them to ask for help in the subjects. I had to figure it out on my own. But they kept pushing. They kept emphasizing this is important. And I knew that about them because early on in my education, we had an issue. The issue was that my family moved from Brooklyn, New York to Long Island, thinking that we were going to go to better schools. Want to get out of the city, go to the suburbs. We got to this nice school district that had a reputation for good education. But they looked at my name, looked at my brother's names, had Spanish names. They must not speak English. We spoke English fine. And so they put us in special education. And we were in special ed classes, and I was only in first grade, so I didn't mind, because all we did was play. I like to play. But my older brother, Felipe, he knew something was wrong. He knew that, we're not doing any work here. So he went home and told my parents, he said, we're not learning anything. And my parents' reaction is typical of many immigrant parents. They said, you do as you're told. You behave yourself. You do the work. Well, that went on for a couple days until my brother came back and said, we're still not learning anything. And he showed him a paper airplane he'd made in class. He said, that's all I did today. And then my father started to believe that maybe something is going on. My father was a police officer in New York City. So he decided maybe I should come to the school in uniform, because maybe they'll take me more seriously. So he showed up the next day in uniform to ask about the classes that we were in. And they said, oh, Mr. Noguera, it's okay, we have him in the right classes, you can assure it's a very good school district. He said, I want to see the classes, because he says they're not learning anything. They got uncomfortable. He said, we don't usually let parents go to the class. He said, I insist, I want to see the class. And so reluctantly, they took him to see the class, and he saw that this was a holding tank. This was not special education. This was just a place where they put children they didn't know how to serve. And so he said, I want them out of those classes now. They said, well, Mr. Noguera, first we'll have to test them. He said, go ahead and test them. So they tested us. And we went from being special ed students to gifted students in a single day. And because of my father's intervention, my older brother, Felipe, went on to go to Harvard. I went on to go to Brown. What would have happened had they not intervened? Where would we end up? It is a mistake that too many parents make. They think if I just do my job, I send them to school, it's all going to be okay. No. You know who knows that the most? The teachers. Ask the teachers, how many of them just send their kids and say, good luck, kid, it's going to be fine? I say, no, the teachers are careful about what school their children are in, about what classes they're in, about what they're taking. You have to know. You have to be involved, because too often when we're not involved, our children don't get what they need and deserve. And so I want to encourage you to take the time to get to know who the teacher is. Make sure they have an ability to contact you. And sometimes, if you don't have internet access or we don't have a cell phone, the same number, make sure that if it changes, we go back and let them know, this is how you reach me. Because we need to be proactive in contacting our teachers before there's a problem. We want to know as soon as there's signs of trouble so that we can intervene and address it together. What we need is a partnership between parents and educators, between parents and school. The partnership has to be rooted on an understanding that we want the same thing for our children. The schools want to see them succeed, the parents want them to succeed. How do we work together to ensure success? When the parents and the educators are on the same page, kids are going to do better. That's what everything shows. And so we need to spend the time, and that's why what the district is doing today, to invest in parents, to make sure that you understand what's involved, is so important to the performance of this district as a whole. I was talking to a group of parents, Vietnamese parents in San Francisco a few years ago, and I was explaining this point about the importance of being involved. And I saw one parent, she was becoming very upset, frustrated, shaking her head. And I said, what's wrong? She said, I'm a garment worker. I work 10 hours a day. I said, now you tell me I have to be involved too. I thought that they knew what they were doing at the school. Why do I have to be involved? I'm not an educator. And I said, well, that's a good point. But sometimes when we're not involved, our children don't get what they need to be successful. And so this is not a question of scrutinizing and judging. It is a question of being involved, being informed, making sure that the quality of what they get is what it should be, that the children are challenged. How often do your children come to you at the end of the day when they get home and say, wow, what a great day. I learned so much. I can't wait to go back. How often does that happen? Well, it should happen, shouldn't it? It should happen. Because education should inspire. Education should make you want more learning. And so ask your kids, what are you learning? What do you like? What have you read lately that has changed the way you think? Be curious with them. Tap into their curiosity. Because the more curious they are, the more they'll learn. And here's the thing we know about children. They're naturally curious, aren't they? What's the most common question you've ever heard from a 3-year-old? Why? Let's wait, Dad, over there. He's going to be asking you why soon. And why is a complex question, isn't it? Why do I have to take a bath? They're serious. What will happen if I don't? Why do I have to eat broccoli? They want to know. Why is the sky blue? That's a really tough one, isn't it? Our children are naturally curious, and the more curious they are, the more they will learn. And that's what we're after. Children who are not satisfied with getting good grades, but who actually have a desire to continue learning. Because those are the people that are going to make a difference in the world. Not the ones who are just satisfied with getting good grades. And good grades, let me be clear, is very important. But I meet lots of students right now at UCLA who come in with good test scores, good grades, and are struggling. They're struggling because no one is there to tell them to go do their work. No one is telling them to get out of bed. No one is dealing and helping them deal with depression and anxiety. And we have so many students now suffering from depression and anxiety. They have the academic preparation, but they don't have the emotional and psychological maturity for college. And so that's where parents come in again. We have to think about, what about character? What about their well-being? What about their emotional state? How do we help our children to become independent adults who can navigate the world on their own? That's how we know we're successful. And that's the part that they're going to get from you. By watching you and how you manage things and learning from you and your experiences. So I want to encourage you to not settle for the grades. And that might seem odd, isn't it? That we would say, I would say not settle for the grades, because we're so happy when our kids get good grades. But as I said already, I see kids who get good grades. I had a student from San Diego, this area, valedictorian of his high school. He came to me and he told me he'd gotten all A's his first year, and now he was struggling because he wasn't going to class. I said, why aren't you going to class? He said, because I'm depressed. I said, why are you depressed? He said, my mother cleans houses for a living. And I'm feeling guilty that I'm in school, living in this nice dorm while my mother's cleaning houses. She's sick. I feel like I should drop out of school to go work to help my family. So he was depressed. And I understood why he felt that way. And I said, you need to help your family, but the best way to help them right now is to get your education, do as well as you can. But he was grappling with issues that he was not really ready for at 18, 19 years old, because he had not really thought through how to manage this responsibility. And so I want to encourage you to think about what you need to do for your children. And as we know, they're all different, aren't they? If you have more than one child, they're not the same. My first child, he was very independent, and he's now following in my footsteps, getting his doctorate at UCLA. My second child, my daughter, she was very outgoing, very warm, but she still has this deep sense of loss about her mother 13 years later. It's impacted her, impacted the way she's raising her child. And so I have to, as a parent, keep thinking, what do I do? How do I support my children so that as adults they can continue to be independent, stand on their own, do what it takes to be successful in life, which is not simply about how much money you make. And so I want to encourage you to think about your children, what they need, not just materially, but in terms of the emotional support, the psychological support, the love, the guidance, because we know that that is what ultimately is going to make a difference. Let me say some things about how you can work with the schools, because as I said already, this educational enterprise, and you're going to have workshops today, I'm sure that'll go into greater detail, and I had prepared a whole presentation for which I hope they'll give to you later because we don't have the technical support, so it was shut down. So I'm ad-libbing for you, but come prepared. When you do come to a parent-teacher conference, come with questions. Don't just come passively and say, okay, show me what you got. Don't just come because you're feeling guilty and you want to show them I care. No, come with questions. Ask to see the work. How is my child doing? Ask, what are they learning? What are the goals for this year? So you're clear about what they are supposed to do. What are the big projects? What are the big assignments coming up? So you know when they're expected to have a test coming up, so they should be studying. And then ask, what can I do to support my child at home? How can I be most effective in helping them to be successful? Because you have a role to play, and you want to send the message back to those teachers that you're a partner in this too. And that makes a huge difference. Our parents can either be the big ally, the secret weapon that makes a difference in education, or we can be a big problem. There are a lot of places where there are big problems, where parents are problems, and a lot of times the schools will say, you know, we really don't want parents involved. Because parents come and they give us a hard time because they haven't invested in how to build partnerships. Parents who've had a bad time in school themselves, a lot of times they come up, they have a flashback. It's like they remember how difficult school was. And so therefore they don't come with trust, they come with questions, they come with challenges. And so building trust is a critical part of building a relationship with our parents, with our families. And unfortunately, one of the things our teachers don't get while they're in graduate school is how to do that. There's no curriculum on how to build trust with parents, how to work with parents who come from different backgrounds, who speak a different language, different culture. But we know if they don't get that, if the parents don't build that trust, then therefore they're not going to be the partner. And so I want to again applaud Sweetwater for doing the work to get you involved and make sure that you're informed. Now I want to encourage you to continue to do your part and to continue to ask the critical questions about your child and their education and about the schools and the school system and where it's going. I was talking to the superintendent, to Dr. Janney, at the beginning and about the financial challenges confronting the school district. And she was very optimistic and encouraging, saying, yeah, we've been through hard times, but we're getting through it. Well, I live in Los Angeles, and many of you know Los Angeles is having hard times too. We had a strike at the beginning of the year, 8 days. And we're not on the same page. Hopefully we're moving on the same page. And I was on the picket line with some teachers because they were demanding, they wanted lower class size, and who could disagree with that? They have class size of over 40 children in the classroom. And how can you learn in that kind of a situation? And they have counselors, one counselor, over 800 kids. These are not conditions for good teaching and learning. So I was there with the teachers, but then I tried to explain, I said, you know what? The district's going broke. They can't pay the pensions. And if we don't find a way to get everybody on the same page, this whole system's gonna go down. So I hope that LA is finally working together instead of turning on each other, but you already are in a place where there's working together, where the board, the district, the union are working together. Now, we gotta get the parents. Because when you are involved, and I'm so glad to see the state senator here today because it means that he understands parents matter and he wants to be here and he wants to show support. The politicians will follow when they know that you care. The politicians will know this is important. Public education is still important, even at a time when we have teachers striking across the country in different states because they can't get basic wages, that this matters and we need to continue to invest. California is at a crossroads, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this new governor. He made so many promises, and it's going to be, I don't know how he's going to deliver on all those promises. He said he's going to get preschool for everybody. He's going to make community college free. What is he going to do about the fact that California is 43rd in the nation in per pupil spending? 43rd in the nation. You know, the other states that spend like California are places like Arkansas, Louisiana, much poorer states. California is not poor. We're home to Silicon Valley, to Apple, to Google, to Hollywood. How can we say we're poor, that we don't have money for schools? Well, we have an education in California, we have a problem of being stingy when it comes to children in schools. And that's what we have to change. Because when we don't invest in our children, we pay the consequences. One of the things that's happening here in this district, and it's happening all across the country, is the number of people having children is going down, and the number of people living longer is going up. We have an aging population. And that creates a problem because it means that we have fewer workers to support people when they retire. And that's what I try to tell the old people out there. I say, you know what? Even if you don't have kids in school, you should care about what happens to schools because that's going to affect your retirement. Because if we don't have people working, Social Security is going to collapse. We're all in this together. And so as parents, you got to send that message out too to your neighbors. Don't just think about your child. Think about all the children. Think about this community. Talk to your real estate agents. They will tell you the quality of the schools affect the value of your property. That's how important it is. So public education is key to our future. Key to the kind of country we'll become. And we live at a time when this country is so polarized, so divided. We need education now more than ever. We have too many people influenced by fake news, and they can't tell what's real from what's not. They haven't gotten the critical skills that allow them to see through the rhetoric and see through the messages that promote division and hate. And that's again a reason why, as parents, you need to stay involved. Stay involved with your child, stay involved with this system, continue to advocate for public education because that is the key to our future. So let me close by saying this. Our parents play a critical role in raising our children. The partnership is vital to making sure that that role is so important. I remember when I was taking my youngest two to school, and I would walk them in, and they were both so excited about learning. And I was lucky because they went to a school that did nurture and did support. And I remember one day, my son, Antonio, was a little nervous because he's more shy about going, and his teacher came, and she said, "I'll take it." And he readily went to her. And I thought, wow, what a comfort to me as a parent to know that my child is with someone who loves and cares about him. He's still connected to that teacher almost 25 years later. So I want to encourage you as parents to stay involved, to stay vigilant, stay involved with your children, because the future of this country, the future of this community is going to be determined by what happens to our children. Thank you.